SCG Atlanta and the Pack 10K charity event both took place this past weekend. We're going to get into some of the deck lists today, discussing the metagame, showcasing the conversion rates for the Pack Championship, because we were fortunate enough to have the information for 367 deck lists. They will be in the description below if you're looking for anything crazy. Plenty of information to be found today. Let's get right on into it. The Pack Charity 10K registered decks. Ruby Amethyst came in on top with the #1 registered deck in the metagame, coming in at about 85 registered decks. Ruby Sapphire, Amber Steel, Emerald Steel, all pretty close together. All three of the steel decks pretty close, within the 50 to 60 area. Blue-red hedging its bets a little bit over Amber Steel and Emerald Steel, but that's okay. Sapphire Steel coming in with 40, Emerald, Amethyst coming in with 30, Amethyst Steel with 22, Ruby Amber with 20, and then the other decks, some total of only 11 other random decks that were registered this weekend. There was also no surprising top 16. None of those decks were able to squeak in. So I'd say pretty diverse. Ruby Amethyst is only 23% of the metagame, which is a lot lower than previous, events, kind of showcasing it being around 30 to 35%. The Ruby Sapphire decks actually took a dip this time, where they were the most played deck in the last event, but ended up going down a little bit. But hey, we hit 367 players in this event, so still a pretty successful wide range of meta, which I really do love. I think it's great. I think that it's been really interesting. Some people don't believe the meta is that diverse, but you can see here with that amount of different and diversity, and specifically with Ruby Amethyst going down and down, then that's a good look for Disney Lorcana in general, especially, definitely going into set champs where you can really just kind of pick what you want, play a deck that you're really accustomed to playing, and, you can kind of lose sleep if you want to over a specific matchup, or you can just say, hey, if I get paired in that matchup, I got to play my best, and hopefully my opponent makes a mistake. That's kind of where I'm going to be going into this weekend. I'm just going to play a deck that I feel comfortable with and not sweat too much about having to decide, hey, I need to be able to beat 8 different decks in the metagame. Like, no, I'm just going to be like, hey, I'm going to beat 5 different decks in the metagame, be even against 2 of them, and if I play against the one that I suck against, then hey, that is what it is. But let's take a look at some of the conversion rates. Huge shout out to a Discord member that actually sent me this incredible amount of information. So shout out to Metz Bauer, a Discord member of ours, community member. Was really pumped to see this. I actually started working on the data myself last night, got tired, went to bed, and then woke up to this amazing Discord message kind of sharing all this information, which is great because it saved me a bunch of time this morning. So huge shout out to you. We can see here the conversion rates for Ruby Amethyst was 2.4%, Ruby Sapphire was 7.1%, Amber Steel was 3.8%, Emerald Steel was 3.8%, Sapphire Steel was 5%, Emerald Amethyst was 6.7%, Amethyst Steel was 4.5%, Ruby Amber was 5%, and the others converted for 0%. We even went one step further, showcasing the conversion to top 8, which is great. The information's all there. I think it's really cool to see these things and really understand that, hey, even though in this particular event, Ruby Amethyst was the most played deck, the conversion, to 23% from the metagame and only 2.4% of that into the top 8 or top 16, I should say, for that matter, is pretty remarkable. We did end up with one of them in top 4, which is a deck list we're going to be looking at shortly. But all in all, I love seeing data like this. I think it's really important for players to have access to this type of information. I wish that we could get this more often, because I think it would help the most competitive high echelon players make more educated decisions moving forward. What I will say is that a lot of players will only look at the top 16 and will say, oh, there was 4 Ruby Sapphires. Ruby Sapphire won the event. That's got to be the #1 deck out there that I got to prepare for. But if you look at the data and you say, hey, 23% of the field was still Ruby Amethyst, and, there was 20 or 30 more registered Ruby Amethyst decks, I don't want to immediately just think, oh my God, because Ruby Sapphire won, because it was the top 4, it just means that all of a sudden everyone's going to convert their Ruby Amethyst list to Ruby Sapphires. The big difference, in all honesty, is like $200-300 in deck cost, which some percentage of players have no problem making that flip, and they'll just be like, "Yep, I'm just going to play the cards that are good and move on with life." But another percentage is like, "Well, I really don't like the Ruby Sapphire look. I still only really have Ruby Amethyst cards. I only have 4 or 5 days to even get the Sapphire cards." So I would still expect Ruby Amethyst to be probably a pretty highly played deck within the meta for set champs. Definitely week one. If it falls off, if it's not successful, then maybe I would predict it going a little bit further. But I do 100% expect to see more Ruby Sapphire decks have an uptick and be more playable. Definitely the ones that were the most successful this weekend. Winning a 367 player tournament puts a lot of limelight on a deck list. So I 100% expect to see more of it, and probably a lot of that deck in specific. All in all, really great to be able to identify this data and kind of showcase it, really talk through it. If you're a data nerd, please hit me up in the comments. Let me know how you feel about any of this stuff, because it's interesting. It really is. The conversion rates are great. The metagame being as diverse as it is nice. Having 4 of one deck in the top 16 and it not be Ruby Amethyst is like unprecedented in all honesty. So good sign for the game, moving and kind of showcasing that the meta has continuously evolved, and we're seeing that true transition potentially to where Ruby Amethyst is going from the always top dog to finally being, fleshed out a little bit. We'll have to see how it goes moving forward. Let's take a look at some deck lists. So that winner of the 10K charity pack event was Christopher Anderson, repping Ruby Sapphire. Now, this is a list that over the last couple weeks I've talked about at length. I actually played a version of this several weeks ago at a 1K, and it's definitely a deck that is clearly a force to be reckoned with over the next few weeks. Again, when you win a 367-player tournament, I don't really care what the deck is. People will look at it. People will respect it. Some people will pick it up and play it. A lot of times when a deck is proven to be that successful and showcases that in the hands of a player, it's a trusted deck, I do think without a doubt that this is not a deck that anyone can just pick up and play and be successful with. There are definitely mulligan lines that are important. There are strategies to Fishbone Quill, things like that. I also, again, we talk about this really, really often. From one week to the next, this week, this might have been the best version of this deck. No doubt about it. However, if you know this deck's weaknesses, and we talk about how Ruby Amethyst can be a problem, if we discuss how Emerald Steel can be a nuisance for this list as well, then there are certain ways that you might transition this deck, play it into another, a little bit different of a version, play maybe more characters, less songs, things like that. So it is an understanding that, yes, Ruby Sapphire was very successful this weekend, and this deck in its rare form here, likely still very successful in the coming weekends. But it's not to say that you should just pick this up, not play a single game with it until next Friday or Saturday, and expect to do well with it. I do think this is the type of deck that you should definitely pick up, definitely play games with, explore. If you have some time this week, play some games in paper, because this isn't the quickest deck to play either. There are a lot of intricate decisions made. So when you include having to shuffle your own deck, having to make the choices for ink, and things like that, and really kind of walking through the turns a little bit more verbal, then you're going to want to be able to pace yourself with this list, because we don't want to be playing best of 3 with this deck. Also note that this was a best of 2 format. So when you start talking about playing best of 3, you got to win 2 games with this in a 50-minute time limit. This is a bit slower. It is a bit intricate. So it's definitely a deck that, while it was obviously very successful in the best of 2 format, was able to find its way into a home and then win the best of 3. Don't get me wrong. It's still just a matter of like, you need to play games with this. But all in all, I think this is a list that we've talked about so much over the last 3 weeks. If you're looking for more information on what I believe on this, definitely check out the last couple of meta reports. This deck has been successful over and over and over again the last 3 weeks. So just hit up one of those. But all in all, shout out to Christopher Anderson here. Really well played. Deck is well designed. In all honesty, this is the first time. The big difference here, I'm talking about another deck that was looking at. There's another deck coming up that has a huge difference from choices. This one, not so much. The big difference really is nothing. I think this is a very good, straightforward stock list. I think that it's playing everything you want it to play. People might be a little crazy about only 3 Queen of Hearts, but besides that, you can make an argument for shields, if they're good enough, if they're not good enough. I thought they were pretty good on the day watching the games he played. So, all in all, I think this is a very standard, and I would say the current stock version of this list will look very, very similar to this list. Maybe 2 to 3 or 4 cards different, but all in all, this is what I would expect. If your opponent is sitting across from you playing Ruby Sapphire, you can kind of expect that the list will look something like that. This is the second place deck in the 10K pack charity event, played by Emmanuel Mignon. I hope I pronounced that right. If I didn't, I'm so sorry. What I really want to say about this list is that I love it. This is a deck that I have personally, right? Like me personally, I have not had success with Sapphire Steel. Just not my mesh, not my deck. I'm not particularly good with a lot of the lists that I've tried. When I saw this list and when I was, really watching the games be played out on stream, man, did this deck look good. It looked really, really good. It looked really powerful. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what this deck does moving forward. But if we really break it down, the 3 Fire the Cannons are something that we can kind of discuss. They're a bit new, but a lot of that is really just playing a tribute to some of the weaker matches of just not wanting or not necessarily needing to play a card like Captain Hook. Whereas Captain Hook is vulnerable to other things, Fire the Cannons just does exactly what you want it to do in the matchups that you want it. And since you're a Fishbone Quill deck, and the decks that it's bad against, you just get to Fishbone Quill it away for free anyhow, and you don't really miss it. Bell, strange but not special, coming back into the metagame, showcasing like, hey, Lucky Dime's a real card, and I'm going to punish my opponents that don't have answers to it. And in the game against Dave in the top 4, there was a game where like Bell just gained 10 lore in a turn. That did not feel good as a Ruby Amethyst player to see and not really be able to interact with or do anything about. And of course, this is just something that can consistently happen over the course of a tournament. Do you need 3 of them? Maybe not. Maybe you can get away with 2. Hell, maybe you can even get away with 1. But the point is that is just another way, another avenue to gain, literally 25% of the lore that you need is just by casting Bell when you have 10 resources in play and a Lucky Dime. And then you just get to gain 5 lore uncontested with your opponent not being able to react in any which way. Cogsworth is a card that I love so much in this list, and I've seen so many versions of this deck that don't even play the Cogsworth, so it's great to see going back to that. Getting away from Captain Hook and playing Robin Hood and Mr. Smee, but no captains is interesting. But the real truth is that Smee is so good that you don't even need a Captain Hook, and once you have a Cogsworth in play, you don't really care. I will say, I think it's mind-boggling to me that Smee is only a 3 of. It's arguably the best 2-cost character in the game. Pretty much just good in every single matchup, realistically. Like, you just don't really care. And then the idea of the compounding effect with the Cogsworth, also very good. But there is a world where, hey, you would rather 1-jump on 2. I don't think that's true. I think you're much more of a Fishbone Quill deck first. So playing Smee on 2 to contest the board a little bit is always going to be better in my mind. So if you're looking to just get to your 4th Smee, I think going down 1-jump to play 4 Smee is correct. There's even a world where 1-jump's not necessarily in this deck at all, and you can kind of dump 1-jump and play Mickey Mouses again. All in all, I think this is a great deck. I think it's very good against Ruby Amethyst. I felt like watching the top 4 match, Dave did everything possibly correct to be good in the matchup. And in all honesty, had he not top decked the right cards in the right order in game 2, he wouldn't have even made it to a game 3. And in games 1 and 3, it felt nearly helpless. So if you're looking for a deck that might truly prey on Ruby Amethyst, then this is definitely the type of list that I would be looking for. It's really, really powerful. I will say again, much like the Ruby Sapphire deck, this is not a deck. And I mean, this is even worse than that deck. You cannot pick this deck up, play 0 games with it, and just hope to be good with it. There are so many choices that really have to go in. The mulligan strategy is huge. Just so much. Definitely, if you're planning on trying something new this weekend, this is a deck that you should try today. Like literally fire it up today and play games with it before ever making the decision of, what you're going to play on Saturday, Sunday, over the next 2 weeks, etc. Congratulations, Emmanuel. I thought you played great, and I thought this deck was really sweet. Would it really be a top cut in a large event without Ruby Amethyst played by a TFM member? I don't think so at this point. In every single event that's really been truly that large, with that amount of players, of over 100 plus players, TFM has been bringing Ruby Amethyst to its consistency, finishing third place overall in the pack event. They did actually have to play a third place game in which Dave was able to outmatch his opponent in the best of 3 against Emerald Steel, and pick up the third place win. And honestly, it was a $300 game. So huge shout out to Dave there. This is a list that we have consistently continued to grow. Without a doubt, we work on this list almost every single day together in a way. Like Dave, Melissa, Rob, George, really put in the work the last couple weeks with this list. Last week, Melissa was able to take a version of this list and win an Elsa again. This week, Dave finishes third overall in the biggest Pixelborn tournament to date. The key factors here: no Minnie Mouse, no spell books. There's a Scar. There's only 3 B prepares. There's 2 Maui's hooks. I keep telling you guys this, and I'm not making it up. Like, this deck has so many tools. It has so many choices. This ink combination gives you like the potential of like 80 playable cards. So deciding what those playable cards are at the beginning of every weekend is a key factor to success. And this weekend really showcased it. I believe Dave and Melissa both had the exact same 60. Melissa finished just outside of the top 32, but she started the event like 4-1 and then split a bunch of rounds. So like the point system for bonus points didn't really work out in her favor. Dave was able to get a couple more bonus points along the way. All in all, this list was great this weekend for the 2 players of the team that played it in the event. Huge successful amount of cards. And then if you really want to hear a full extent of why there's no Minnie Mouse, maybe why there's no spellbook on this given weekend, why we put 3 castles back in, we'll have some great news. I'm actually going to be interviewing Dave this week. So you're going to hear from the horse's mouth himself. Let him, express how he wanted to play this deck this weekend and why next weekend it might be different. In all honesty, that's why I think it's really crucial to hear from the players themselves, give them the opportunity to talk. So if you want to hear from Dave himself, if you have any specific questions, hit me up in the comments, let me know. And of course, if you're not yet, make sure you hit subscribe because that's the best way to hear the interview later on in the week. Let's move on to the next stuff. So SCG Atlanta only had 56 players, sadly. This is the top 8 breakdown. We had 2 Ruby Amethyst, 2 Ruby Sapphires, 1 Emerald Steel, 1 Emerald Amethyst, 1 Amber Steel, and 1 Amethyst Steel. I made a tweet about this. To me, this is really sad. We went from 175 players for the 5K in Philadelphia, even 110 players the day before that. And I think that the Sunday tournament was 63 players. So all 3 of the tournaments in Philadelphia were more than the 5K in Atlanta. And that's really upsetting. It really sucks. It's not great to see that when the game is starting to grow and peak, but you can't win them all, I guess. So is what it is. But all in all, I still want to give a huge shout out to this event for SCG supporting Lorcana still, because it's important that, not everyone can go to every Ravensburger events. If there's local events like this in your area, you really should be supporting them because they are likely to stand the test of time than some of the other avenues to play this game. And I'm always going to be of the particular person that's going to go to my local game store, support the local game store, go to a local convention like this if I can. Granted, this is Atlanta. This is 12 hours for me, so I'm not in a position to like say, oh, I'm just going to drive 12 hours to play Atlanta. I'm not going to do that thing. But if this weekend this was in Philadelphia, I absolutely would have went again. So I just think it's important for us to support these things when we can. This is SCG is a free badge. You don't have to pay anything to get in. Just go, you pay for your tournament, you play in the event. And I think it's going to be really important that over the longevity of Disney Lorcana, that us as players, we support paper tournaments. That's kind of all I have to say on the matter. But hey, all in all, shout out to SCG for giving it a go, giving it a try. And honestly, they may have really made out in Philadelphia, but they took a huge hit this weekend from Disney Lorcana. So all in all, let's go. The winner of the 5K in SCG Atlanta was Ryan Miles playing Emerald Steel. This was a list that I spent nearly 8 hours testing on Friday. I actually took the Speci list that he top 16 with. I just played 8 hours of games with it. And then at the end of the day, I made a bunch of cuts. And ironically, a lot of the cuts that I had made started to look very much like this list. The Robin Hood felt like a kind of an unnecessary evil to me, where yes, there were games where it was good, but there was most games where it was inked. So kind of what I said in the meta report, I felt like I could cut that card pretty easily. Baboom was another card that I definitely felt like I could get rid of pretty easily, and I would have 100% removed it, which is what happened here. Rise of the Titans was a card that I felt like I was missing because locations were going to be problematic. So having 2 rises were really nice, because a lot of the times now you're not seeing Rise in these deck lists and in most Steel deck lists. So more players feel comfortable playing their location. And if you can kind of time walk them just by playing Rise of the Titans, by removing it and then just going on about your business, it can be kind of a death sentence in certain matchups. The other card that I wasn't crazy about was Frere Tuck. But, it is what it is. Like, it has its place. It has its moments. It's definitely very good in certain situations. And others, at the end of the day, it's ink. What I really love personally about the list that I didn't play was the Along Came Zeus and then even more 4-drops. I felt like having to only have Frere Tuck wasn't enough warrant to play and then Along Came Zeus. But if you add, Donalds and you have Daisies and you have like 7 or 8 4-cost cards, then Along Came Zeus starts to look a lot better, because it really can start to remove more problematic cards that hit the table later. So I 100% am in favor of that trade. Everything else looks really great. This list looks really solid. I think it's definitely set up well in the metagame. It played really well for Ryan, who I believe was 4-0, was able to draw in the top 8 and then just win out in the top 8. Definitely a great day for him. I'm pretty confident he was undefeated. I could be wrong, but I think he was undefeated. But the good news is for everyone, again, I'm going to be talking to Ryan as well. So we have Dave coming up as an interview for Ruby Amethyst, and we have Ryan coming up in an interview for Emerald Steel, talk about SCG Conf Atlanta. So if you have any questions for Ryan, hit me up in the comments. I will do my best to give them out and try and get as much information from Ryan as possible. Huge shout out to you, sir. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next deck. This week, we didn't have to go all the way to Order 66, but hey, 62 card pickup is a new line. DeCandio played really well in the Pack 10K tournament this past weekend. He had a pretty unfortunate matchup in top 16, and his day ended. He was 3rd place going into the top 16, ended up losing in top 16, and his day was over. But all in all, again, just showcasing Amber Steel and its power. What I do find fairly comical is there was a ton of conversation over the last few days about, or I should say the last few weeks, about Lantern, Flute, Pride Lands, and all of that above, and like what is best, why you should be playing X and why you should be playing Y. And DeCandio just went straight forward and said, I'm just going to play my Lanterns. I'm going to make my guys cheaper. I have 3 bare necessities to get rid of the problematic cards that really hurt me. And all in all, I'm just a value a whole new world deck with all of the best cards in Disney Lorcana for Amber and Steel. And he really took it home, played really well, did really well, and then ran into its bad matchup. And I think that this is something that I'll be talking about this week in the interviews. But right now, the way the metagame is, you have too much to prepare for, right? There are certain decks that I do believe, this one is one of them, that has the ability to just go and say, if I win my die roll, I can probably win most of my matchups as long as my deck does what it does. And I have the ability to like win on the draw because this deck has the unique ability to ramp one because of Lantern to keep yourself on even with your opponent, or it also has the ability to gain back resources through Singing mechanic. So all of those things are pretty great to play from behind. And that's why I think this deck is actually a really successful deck in the 2-game format, because it gives you a really good opportunity to have the most non-games and most non-matchups. Really kind of abusing the bonus point system is a really great decision if you're very good in a particular field with the Whole New World, Amber Steel, Flute Song, or I should say Steel Song type genre. But at the same time, this list just showcases, again, like 66 cards a few weeks ago wins the tournament, 62 cards was in third place going to top 16. The cards don't really matter. The number of cards in your deck doesn't seem to matter for this particular list, because it's just showcasing, like, man, all these cards are really good. They're all impactful. As long as my ink to unink ratio is fine, we can kind of get away with these things. A Whole New World, as long as it's like I don't have to a Whole New World on turn 3 or turn 4, or I should say on 2 or 3 every single game, then playing 2 more cards doesn't affect the ratios enough if you're trying to do it on like turn 5 or turn 6 more often, and just get the most out of your hand before your opponent and then dump it and then kind of do it all again, or set up these crazy turns where you have multiple stingers in play or multiple shift characters in play, so you can kind of like a Whole New World, grab your swords, a Zeus, like all of these things all in one turn, and then just pass it back to your opponent and say, okay, figure out how to deal with what I'm doing now on like 4 ink, where I have 5 ink and infinite characters in play and things like that. So all in all, shout out to Candio again. I'm sure he'll be putting out another video on this. If you haven't checked out Candio yet, he does have a YouTube channel. Definitely look him up. He's been on an absolute run in these pack tournaments. So shout out to you again, sir. Congratulations on the finish. And hey, won't shock me if you're in the next one as well. Here's another deck from the SCG Con Atlanta 5K. This is very interesting on the weekend. This took a top 4 spot in the 5K, and then the following day, a version of this list played by Zahn actually won. The Sunday tournament, sadly, was only 23 players, so I wanted to showcase the 56-player 5K one instead. Still give a shout out to SCG Con here, but this is a list that, again, it's been growing, right? We've talked about it a bunch. We've seen different versions of this now be successful. I would say that this is the less aggro version, more mid-range version, showcasing, but double Spellbook is the big talk away here. Understanding that what this deck does incredibly well is answer every single card your opponent plays, and then goes off the back of Spellbook, go, and only 1 castle. I can see a world where that could be 2 or 3, just to play into this a little bit more. Like maybe we don't need 3 Benja. We can play another castle. The Tinkerbell, I love the 1-up Tinkerbell. I think for the most part, because this list doesn't have any 5-cost characters, it's not playing the Robin Hood or anything like that, so you can't really get away with playing Grab Your Swords. I do appreciate just having the Tinkerbell instead. All in all, this list is great. It's doing a lot of really interesting things in the game, but what it's doing most is saying, I'm just going to win this game over the course of 10 to 15 turns by getting there slowly, by daggering my opponent with 1 lore at a time that's uncontested because of a Spellbook, or because of Goat, or because of Castle. And then from that point forward, I'm just going to play Zeus, play Let the Storm Rage on, utilize Fox, utilize the Pinocchios to get trades with my Captain Hooks and my Rafikis, utilizing the 2 lore and the 3/3 bodies from Smee and Snake. So this deck does a really great job of just defending the board really, really well, drawing a bazillion cards. We have the 4 Maleficent, the 4 Merlins, the 4 friends on the other sides, the 4 Chernobog's followers. Like this deck does nothing but draw cards, remove cards from the board, and gain passive lore without even having to quest. Emerald Amethyst picking up a top 8 in the 10K charity pack event. This is another list that, once again, last week had a very successful week, winning one of the larger paper tournaments to date. This week, picking up a top 8 in one of the largest Pixelborn tournaments to date. So, again, this deck is just a nuisance to the metagame. I think that this is once again showcasing, when we really start looking at those breakdowns of the top 16s and top 8s, that the deck is so good at doing exactly what it wants to do, that in a versatile metagame and this diversity of it, you really have an opportunity to just catch people off guard, punish people for not respecting your play style, and it's just really, really good. I mean, this deck on the play is sometimes impossible to beat. On the draw, with cards, like Kit Cloud Kicker, Mother's Knows Best, if your opponent cannot answer Ursula, in all honesty, like, this is the one thing I love about this list, is that same thing with Emerald Steel. If you can play a deck that has 2 ways to play the game from turns 3 through 5, I think you're in a really good position right now. I really do. I feel like that's a very comfortable position to be in the metagame. Because if your opponent can't just accurately pick your script and can't take you off your script because you have different ways and different avenues, then you're in a good position to really flip the script on your opponent and then make your opponent have to, like, think on the fly, and that causes mistakes and things like that. So I think this is all really good. Ursula Deceiver coming into play on 2, giving you all the information you possibly need to make the best choices for the next 2 to 3 turns, plays a huge role in this deck and in Emerald Steel. And that's what I really like about this. That's why I think you don't see this deck be successful in large numbers, but the players that are committed to playing it just understand how to adapt on the move. And I think that's the big thing here. That's the big takeaway, is that this list is very good at tempo balance, tempo understanding of what it needs to do to get the most out of its cards. And sometimes when you play Ursula Deceiver, you on the fly have to go, okay, I have to change my next 3 turns. But the deck itself, when you look at the lineup here, has all of the ability to do that. Like, it has all of the potential to make those changes on the fly for you and give you the best opportunity to be successful. And I think that's why this deck has been fringe successful. We've seen it win big tournaments. We've seen it be successful in large tournaments. A top 8, a second place runner-up, a winner, consistently seeing this. And now we're seeing it from more than one player, which I think is a big deal too. So definitely a list that I would be looking out for. Definitely something that I do think is a little more easier to play on average. I think a lot of people do really enjoy looking at their opponent's hands and making their inks better, making their choices better. So this is probably something that I would expect to see more players just pick up and play, and not need as much time and effort into it, especially if you're just like a good card game player in general, like, and you're good utilizing information when you have more public information. Then I think a deck like this definitely might suit you. So all in all, congrats again. Well played, top 8, largest Pixelborn tournament to date. Let's talk about one more deck. Amber Ruby picked up a top 16, inevitably losing a matchup that I think it is primed to win against. After day 1, seeing the top 16 decks released very quickly, I might say. Normally, you don't see the top 16 decks until the following morning, but this time for the pack event, we had the top 16 decks released this almost an hour, maybe less than an hour after the 9 rounds were played. And because of that, we were able to look at this list, understand its potential, understand everything it's trying to do, and why it really did prey on the matchups that it wanted to. But we were also able to kind of discuss the matchup and just say, hey, this is what we need to do. This is how we have to be successful. And this is kind of like how we're going to be able to win in this particular matchup. And in all honesty, I still think that the average Ruby Amethyst deck probably loses to this matchup 70-30. It is not a good matchup at all for Ruby Amethyst. I think that Corey was in great position in the tournament if he was able to get past the top 16 matchup against Dave. But, our list was kind of a little bit more tuned to compete with this type of deck. It had the right cards and the right understanding of what to use to remove it, understanding ways that sometimes you just kind of leave Mufasa alone, let him gain his lore, unless you can really over-prepare. I will say the Scar was so good in the matchups in general for both sides. Like, I think Scar is really going to have a coming out party the next few weeks. We've just gotten to this point in the metagame. I said this on the last meta report where playing Be Prepared feels bad. It really does. Like, when you feel like you have to play Be Prepared, it's only good when your opponent is then on no resources. If they have no economy, if they have no cards in their hand, and you still have like 2 or 3, then like, okay, Be Prepared to soft reset, let them play at the top of the deck, and I can try and beat them from there. But when you're playing matches where against like Amber Ruby, that if you Be Prepared them, they probably still have 5 cards in their hand. They might be able to play 2 more cards right away, and if you don't answer those 2 cards, they can just Surfer Stitch, draw 2 more cards, and just continuously threaten the game. It's not a good card right now. It's still one of the best cards, right? I shouldn't say it's not a good card right now, but it's not as primed as it once was because so many of these decks now have the ability to consistently draw cards or take you off your cards in general. So because of that, transitioning to Scar is huge. Scar really is a card that now at that 7, 8, and 9 turns of the game has to create this moment of thought for your opponent to go, man, if my opponent has Scar, I can't even favorably quest here because the Scar can come in, remove my guys, still be on the board, and then I got to deal with it. And then I'm probably the one that has to play Be Prepared. Like, all these things that happen because Scar existing and being played, it's adding another layer to the Ruby Amethyst decks, the Ruby Sapphire decks, the Amber Ruby decks. It just shows, again, that the Ruby removal in this game is second to none for a card that has been really underplayed and undervalued for the course of its entirety of existence, to now finally getting some love, seeing as a 2 of, 1 of, maybe even 3 of in certain lists. Again, I think that that's just an important role moving forward for this in general. What I will say is that this particular list is a very much a you better have Be Prepared for the card you Mufasa, because if you don't, and I flip Minnie Mouse or I flip Pongo or I flip Goofy, your Maui might not be good there, your Fox might not be good there, whatever you have laying around might not even be able to evasively trade into the card that you get with Mufasa, which I think is a pretty key factor and role. I will say from our point of view, the way we played the game, we tried our best to mostly ignore the Mufasa, answer everything else, let Mufasa pick up its 2 lore, or force the Mufasa into actually challenging rather than questing. So if you're able to do that, if you're able to get in front of this deck for the long period of time, this deck doesn't have Heart Atlantis, doesn't have the Pongos, doesn't have Lanterns, this particular version. So if you can do that, they can't get the Scar that quick. They only have 2 Scars. They don't have no Medusa in here, so they only have 4 ladies. So you can actually be ahead of your opponent pretty much of the game if you're on the play. And that's what happened in game 3. We were able to just, like, Dave just played every single character, turned them all sideways, and forced Corey to be the defense. And this deck isn't really made for that whatsoever. It also, outside of Maui, doesn't have a lot of great answers to locations. So it definitely showed some weakness. But all in all, hearing the report from Dave, reading the report, understanding how the match went, how the games were played, and how we were going to attack that, that plan from Saturday night that Dave was able to utilize on Sunday came out really huge and was able to get him into a top 8 for a way more favorable matchup in top 8, in all honesty. So congratulations to Corey here. You played really well, finished 5th overall in the day 1, which is great. But in the end, I do think that the Ruby Amethyst list that we had was just really primed for this matchup, and that made a big deal. Even having 2 hooks when a lot of Ruby Amethysts have been off of hooks, we played 2 of them, which also really was a big difference in kind of answering evasives and things like that. Set championships begin this weekend, Friday, April 19th. And man, am I excited. I'm actually flying to Minnesota this weekend. I said this last week. I'm going to be hosting a 5K at the FFG Game Center on Saturday, but Friday night I'm playing at Bunker Games. I've never been there before. I haven't played in a Disney Lorcana. Well, I've never played a Lorcana tournament in Minnesota, but I haven't played a card game in Minnesota since I played Star Wars Destiny a bazillion years ago. So I'm really excited to get out there, play some games with the Minnesota community, see everybody on Saturday. I haven't figured out if I can play on Sunday yet or not, but I'm going to try to. But all in all, set championships are coming this weekend. I actually have a bit of a survey going right now. It's going to be the pinned comment. So if you're still watching, thank you so much. And you want to fill out the survey and kind of be a part of that. I'm working on one more piece of content based around set champs for this weekend, utilizing that information. So if you want to be a part of that, be a part of that data, then hey, do me a favor, fill that survey out for me. It means a whole bunch to me. Of course, if you guys enjoyed this content today, thank you guys so much for watching all the way. Hit that like button. 2 weeks of set champs coming, lots and lots of stores to report. We probably won't get every single report ever, but hey, if you are a store and you're really committed and you played it at something and you really want to share the information, please DM me on Discord, hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you want to find me. I want to show the love to the stores. I'm impartial to the set championships strategy. I kind of wish it wasn't jammed in 2 weeks because I think it would have been a really good opportunity for stores to really have their kind of their moment in the sun of being able to host an event, get 60 players, get 80 players, get 100 players into a set championship. If we could strategically plan them throughout a 3-month period, that's not what happened. So we're jamming everything into 2 weeks, which kind of sucks because it really does mean it's just more local players. And the stores really aren't going to be able to benefit from the store kits as much as I think they could have. But hey, here we are. It's going to be exciting. If you want to report on it, hit me up. You know where to find me. If you don't know where to find me, comment on this. I will let you know where to find me. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Good luck in set championships. Congratulations to the PAC charity event. It was very successful. I don't know what the final number was raised for charity, but hey, all in all, had 4,500 people or more watching on Twitch for the finals. That's a huge success. Congratulations to the Pixelborn community. And again, SCG might have been a little bit of a downer, but hey, moving forward, we got Ryan Miles coming this week, Dave Sonberg coming this week, and we never know what else. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next one.